Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This time we're not doing a face cam because we are doing a deck tech. I promised a lot of people that we'll be doing a Rai deck tech, especially after Ascent Chicago, going over some of the choices I made, the lines that you're trying to do with Rai, trying to explain more of the gameplay style behind Rai, especially going into this type of meta. So you're going to go ahead and hear a little bit of sort of my thought process behind that. That being said, we're going to go ahead and start off with pretty much the draw engine of Rai. Pretty much what you're going to use early on, what's going to be overall good for you, and sort of how your main game is going to go. So early on with Rai, the main point is you want to draw cards. And with that, we have increasing dangers. We run 4x of these. These are really good to run, especially if you're running the case that you're turn 1 for the game. You can increase the danger turn 1, draw a card into your opponent's memory, get your card in memory yourself, as well as draw the extra card. And just pretty much gets a lot of your engine online ready to go and start filtering through your deck. Into number 2, we have 4 Creative Shocks. Creative Shocks is just a good card, draws 2, get rid of 1, you get rid of a fire if you're already level 1 Rai or level 2 Rai, which sometimes where you want to use it for if you're able to. If not, it's completely fine. So you're going to discard a fire card, especially increasing danger later on where you don't need it as much. You go ahead and get rid of those cards if sort of deal with it. Also, we'll talk about later some good targets like Voltaic Sphere, which is good for the discard. We run 1 turbocharge. We do run backup charge in here. So with that, we run 1 turbocharge to filter through the deck. And I'm going to put this in sort of our combo piece / draw cards is our Careful Studies. Careful Studies is pretty much your main combo, main piece later on that you go ahead and get a bunch of light encounters. Especially with the fact early on that you go ahead and say if you're Rai level 2, you cast Careful Study for free. If you're level 8, because of efficiency, you get 6 light encounters with the Rai level 2 inherited effect. And then you go ahead and draw 2 cards off of the Careful Study for pretty much free with a very little interaction into it. And then from our draw engine, so let's go ahead and get these out of the way here. We do probably for the camera focusing. As much as I turn it off, it likes to stay on. We have the setup. And by the setup, I mean we have 3 Scry Disguise. This could be argued to be up to 4. I'm not a big Scry Disguise enjoyer. I run 3 personally. This is pretty much setting up for your later turns, especially if you go ahead and set up your Glimpse. Glimpse are like 8, 9, 10, 11, if not bigger. Go ahead and set up the top of your deck to go ahead and set up the combos and set up sculpt your hand pretty much how you want it off of your draws. And into our stall pieces, we have a couple different pieces of stall. We have 2 Beast Reunions as a good pretty much say no to attack card. You don't have to worry about taking damage from the True Sight or anything like that or any fancy gimmicks. This is pretty much says nope, you can't attack me this turn and pretty much buys you that extra turn. We run 2 Vanish from Sights. These can be argued to be cut, especially the fact that we're now running into stuff like Wind Automaton Allies. I was running, what's her name? Rose, and that has True Sight, and Ethereal Slime has True Sight. So get to round cards like Vanish from Sight. I still like it early on, especially versus Philo decks or a couple other decks or Fiza. It still buys us some extra turns, but we are running 2. We are running 2 in the sideboard that we'll go over a little bit later, but it's not as big of a factor as it used to be. And then the very different decision is 3 Resolute Stands. This is usually ran as a 4. You can argue cutting one of these Vanish from Sights to make it an extra Resolute Stand if you want to, depending on the meta you're seeing, or make it 3 and 4. But it's sort of just an overall good card. It lets you go ahead and pay 3 as long as you have it, prevent 3 damage, 3 combat damage for the entire turn, and then lets you pretty much buy the extra turn if you need to, and shuts down some of those smaller ally decks that only gets it in 1s and 2s or early slime decks. They're not getting it as much as 5 big swingers if you're able to deal with Ethereal Slime or Storm Slime early. Then going into, I want to consider maybe another stall piece. It's a little hard to say. We do run 1 Sparklight in here. The 1 Sparklight is mostly brought in because it's a fancy tech for dealing with cards like Stifling Trap. If you're trying Dungeon Guide, you Sparklight your own Dungeon Guide, you get the Dungeon Guide trigger to still go off because the unenter is no longer stifled, and then you can go ahead and resolve Dungeon Guide and get your fast level up. It's also good into some of those early sort of boards that say something like Twilight Slime is in the Slimes deck early on. It gives you a way to answer those decks as well as you're facing the right mirror. This also allows you to go ahead and pop a Spell Shield Arcane. But we next go into another 1x card for a stall piece is Tether and Flames. So Tether Flames is brought in for Tristan. I personally like this card. It's won me a couple of games in testing. It was a card that was brought in for, say, your opponent's trying to incap or Shadow Strike you using a lot of their resources. You can then Tether and Flames them for damage and then still in response Fireball if you're able to do that. If they don't have like Corrosive Outlook on the field. So this card does let you go ahead and say no to your opponents. Or if your opponent's trying to Storm Slime you, since this card is negate target card activation, it can go ahead and negate any type of card, action, ally, attack, etc. So it makes this card very versatile, and we run 2 more in the sideboard as well. Like I said, this card has come in handy a lot of times. Just be careful. Sometimes they'll still take the damage. So you pretty much want to set this up with, say, like a Fireball backup and make them really think about if they want to take this damage and risk you having a Fireball or a response to this damage as well. Or then they go ahead and just end the game if they decide to take the damage to let their card resolve. And then Self-explanatory, the only ally in this whole deck is for Dungeon Guides. Dungeon Guide is brought in. Dungeon Guide is used to go ahead and fast level us from 2 to 3. I've used this a couple times though, going from 1 to 2, especially because the fact if you're dealing with stifling traps, a lot of your opponents won't stifle trap a Dungeon Guide if you're going from 1 to 2. So you're going to get the dungeon effect on the field as well as banish to Arcane because of it. And if you're able to set up with a couple more cards into your memory, you can go from that turn to 3 on your next materialization phase. So some of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're trying to play the Dungeon Guide a little bit early and having it sort of come out in sort of a full swing type of force. And never forget to swing with Dungeon Guides. If you're not filtering for a Peaceful Reunion and you can't cast one, swing with Dungeon Guide. Those little bit of chip damage matter. It all adds up. It adds up for lethal in the long term. Speaking of lethal, setting up in our lethal, we run 3 fireballs. I'm not running 4 because the deck gets a little tight. We're also running 4 Arcane Blast and 4 Erratic Bolt. We're going to go over here in a second. So these 3 fireballs are brought in pretty much for our fast speed kill spells, especially if you decide to let something like a Tether Flames do damage to them. It's a way for us to go ahead and end the game on top of a Tether and Flames. And into our Arcane package. So this is going to be a little bit heavy here. So our Arcane draw package is that we have 3 Arcane disposition. This is mostly brought back in to allow us to filter through a deck, find a little bit of solve piece like a Peaceful Reunion if you have enough cards in hand, then play Peaceful Reunion to buy us an extra turn dealing with attackers, and pretty much gets us also set up for more Arcane Blast and Erratic Bolts if we need them. Arcane sites are also self-explanatory here. Arcane sites are our gain 1 level plus draw 4, gain 1 level, draw 1. So with that being said, it does pretty much set us up for efficiency bonuses or Erratic Bolt or Fireball for a little bit extra damage, as well as start filtering through the top for a deck to get what we need to, especially if you're able to set up with something like a careful Skylar Skies. Now this card, I run 4X. I love this card personally, and that is Voltaic Sphere. Voltaic Sphere is a card I don't ever cast. Oh, that is a horrible game. I'm very sorry. This is the problem of having shiny cards. Voltaic Sphere is a card that lets you go ahead and class bonus, not elemental bonus, so you get 3 null lines in. Class bonus, banish the card from your graveyard, and next Arcane elemental spell you activate costs 1 less. So pretty much negates, or not negates, makes your next Arcane spell cost 2 less if it's efficiency. So if you're level 8 off of normal Rai, like you get to normal level 1, level 2, Dungeon Guide into level 3, so we have 5 Arcane banished, and you're into 8 levels on Rai, you can then banish your Voltaic Sphere if it's in the graveyard, and then put you up to level 9, and then it makes your Arcane Blast cost 1 less, so now your Arcane Blast only costs 1 for the next casting. So it does really help you set up for those combo turns if you need to. It's why I sort of like running this card in here. It's good to banish. It's also good to go ahead and discard to your creative shocks because of that secondary banish Voltaic Sphere bonus. There are some arguments I've seen running around as well if people are running Retold Fortune, but we'll go over some other cards or things I'd like to go over later on. And that's pretty much our setup package. And then a little bit also in the setup package, but not really, is we have Spell Shield Arcane. We're running 3X. Pretty much buys us the extra turn, and there's also the cases where you could Fireball yourself, Arcane Blast yourself in response to your own Spell Shield Arcane resolving to go and get those Enlightened counters, draw some extra cards. And the reason why I also want to do this as well to either filter through your deck for cards, or you run cards like Power Overwhelming. Power Overwhelming is in here for the Enlightened counters against some extra levels, especially if you're not able to banish anything extra. Say Tome of Knowledge hasn't come out yet, that you get to go ahead and pretty much cast this down, and then cast the Power Overwhelming, take your Enlightened counters off, get extra levels, then let you finish the game with your level damage or efficiency bonus cards. And speaking of your level damage efficiency bonus cards, we have our damage package. So we have 4 Arcane Blasts, self-explanatory, efficiency bonus, deal 11 to target champion. 4 Erratic Bolts, again, deal leverage to target unit, as well as just banish and draw 2 with its secondary effect if it resolves. And I am running 2 Advent of the Stormcallers, and I'm not 100% sure on this. I was running this originally to help me filter the deck. I never saw it once, and I like to banish it. There's a recommendation I would bring if you're expecting a lot of allies or something for that. Just make this Anger the Skies. There's no reason not to make this Anger the Skies. This was a bad meta call on my part. But Anger the Skies is way better than Advent of the Stormcaller. And that's sort of the main deck. Now I realized as I'm talking about the main deck, I didn't go over the material deck at all. So the material deck, I wanted to get to that first. We have Spirit of Fire, self-explanatory, Rai level 1, Rai level 2, and Rai Stormseer level 3. And going into the rest of it, we have Tome of Sacred Lightning, self-explanatory Arcane card that lets you go ahead and banish your Regalia, which is otherwise known as I grab it, or Tome of Knowledge. Let you go ahead and banish that, get the effect for level as well as draw, as well as helps you banish more cards that draw more off the top. We run the 1 backup charge to go ahead and get an extra draw into our memory. Child's Avoider for taking a lot of damage. GCR to filter through as well. Storm Tyrant's Eye, I really like this card because the fact it is not a draw mechanic. So if you're facing Diana, let you go ahead and get a Storm Tyrant's Eye to get the extra Arcane card off the top of your deck, and it does not count as a draw. So I personally like to any from selecting some Diana. 1 Safeguard Aimment for the Mirror or some Merlins or Storm Slime, and Terrafring as well. Pretty much all these cards are self-explanatory, brought in for specific matchups. I'm not a big fan of running the draw multiple version of Rai. I just found it a little bit weaker. Personally, I'm also a little more of a controlling player, so I don't like going down to have a bunch of Dunver Gallery cards. Into the sideboard here. I run 3 Peer in the Manor. Peer in the Manor is brought in for the solo decks like Merlin, Rai Mirror, or Nico. You pretty much have opportunities to go ahead and get the +2 level, +2 plus your level and light counter, get a whole bunch of election light counters, and set up for your Power Overwhelming, for example. We run 2 Vanishing Sights. Again, these could probably be adjusted, but I like having these in here for facing, I expect a lot more Nico, so Vanishing Sight is really good into the Nico matchups. I run 2 Persian Flames, brought in for allies. This came in clutch 1 time to cure allies as well as deal 3 damage, which ended up giving me perfect lethal damage. No, this can also change back to Anger Skies or a couple other cards if you wanted. This card's a little bit expandable. We run 2 Disintegrates for the Merlin matchups, expecting anything like Deer or Scepters, let's just go ahead and deal with big Regalias or big allies. Run 2 Tether Flames that's brought in for the Tristan matchup to have more ways to go ahead and counter their incaps or counter their Shadow Strikes. 1 more Peace Reunion for the ally matchups or something like Tristan. 2 Sparklights brought in for the allies matchup or the Mirror. And 1 more Fireball as well brought in for the Tristan, because the fact Tristan is running incaps, you need more ways to go ahead and push the damage to kill Tristan, especially because the fact they have Innovator Agilities as well to give Spell Shroud. So it's another way to go ahead and start filtering through a couple extra kill spells if they waste 1. Now, with that being said, I want to talk about a couple of different changes I would probably make after Ascent Houston. I've already talked about one. I think Advent of Stormcaller should go ahead and be Anger the Skies. This is so much better than Allies. This card was dead in most of my matchups. Anger the Skies was a better card to help clear the board state if you need to, and it's a good target to banish if you're not expecting an ally matchup in your round. So I would get rid of these, 100%. I would keep probably in the 1x Tether and Flames. I don't think there's much else I would honestly change in the main deck otherwise. I think I was pretty happy overall with the main deck as a whole. Same thing with the sideboard. The sideboard was built for specific matchups. Now, some lines that we've talked about a little bit earlier and talked more into is the fact that we go ahead and play Creative Shock into discarding our Voltic Spheres, which are good to get the banish if we need to later on as well. Some good discard targets can be that Sparklight or Tether Flames. You don't need it later on as well unless you deal 2 damage. So a couple different lines that you have to think of when you're playing this deck. There's also the case where we talked before, if you Spell Shield Arcane yourself, you go ahead and target yourself with your Fireball, Arcane Blast, or Erratic Bolt to go ahead and get the extra lane counters filtering through the top of your deck. If you need that little bit extra to draw through and get the game sealing cards. But with that being said, everyone, I don't have much else to go in form of this matchup, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I'm going to put the deck list down below in the description that I ran, and if anyone has any questions or concerns about the deck I ran, please feel free to let me know. But with that being said, everyone, I hope everyone had a good one, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace.